Hi, I'm Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy Segment Show. Also today in this segment, I'm at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, and continuing episode 264 with part 3. What you see right behind me is United States Army 8537.
United States Army 8537 was built by General Electric in Schenectady, New York in 1944 and is the 18046th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is a 45-ton center cab type diesel locomotive. This locomotive was used for the United States Army and would serve on the Army Railroad many years ago and would even be used for moving rail cars around as well. The locomotive even saw use in Iran by helping to transport Lend-Lease aid to Russia. It was also stationed at Joliet Army Ammunition Depot in Joliet, Illinois as its last assignment with the military. Then the locomotive was retired and in 1991 it was acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today. It was soon repainted, starting in 2020, and it was sandblasted, and the project went on till 2022. Today, it is preserved at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, and is sometimes seen moving around on the museum grounds and is usually used for moving some pieces of equipment as well, and sometimes it is used to pull the museum's passenger trains and even freight trains as well.
What you see right behind me is Wisconsin Electric
L4. Wisconsin Electric L4 was built by the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Light Company, Cold Springs shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1920 and is a steeple cab type electric locomotive. Originally, it was used for the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Light Company, and this is its original number. Then, in 1938, it was used on the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company and retained its number. Then, in 1963, it was used by the Wisconsin Electric Power Company and still kept its number, and for many years, this locomotive was used for switching cars as well. Then the locomotive was retired in 1972 and was preserved by the Wisconsin Electric Railway Historical Society, and in 1988 it was preserved by a private owner. Then in 1991 it was then acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today, and also it is sometimes seen operating on the museum's tracks as well.
Okay, I'm going to show you all the model railroad display inside this building, and I'll get behind the camera and show you around, so here we go. Okay, so as we're entering the model railroad building, first thing you see is we are entering this part of the building. See this Velocipede, all these black and white photos on this wall as I pan along, as well as the hand car, and there's some pictures on the museum's day. And behind that door will be the model railroad display. So here we go inside. Here's N scale right here. And there's a lot of noise happening as well. Here's lots of HO. This looks like Z scale. Oh, that's a German engine going across. Wow, look at all this, well detailed. They got a lot on the wall and the shelves, so as I pan around, you can even see those posters especially. And look at this HO model railroad. It's much well detailed than I imagined it would be. Here's line L. Especially. There's a model there, Pride and Joy, the 1630. I think they acquired this from a library that had this, I would believe. Or I wonder where they got this model from. Wow. The Polar Express cars being pulled by the UP C&NW Heritage Unit. Wow. That's like Chicago. And look at this model in electric steeple cab. Pretty cool, huh? And this looks almost like Chicago to me, or what's that, Union Station? It couldn't be Chicago because Chicago doesn't have elevated trains that stop at Union Station, of course. Yeah, all these look well detailed. And those look like G-scale on this shelf going across the wall. And yeah, pretty cool. What you see right behind me is Chicago in Northwestern X300902.
Chicago in Northwestern X300902 was built by Pullman in 1936 and is a maintenance of way car. Originally, this car was a baggage lounge car, and originally it was built for the Union Pacific Railroad and was numbered 70 and was used on the City of Denver passenger train as well. As well as that, one other section of the car was used as a tap room, and the tap room had a bar known as the Frontier Shack, and the finished in wood planking had Western themed decorations. Then later it was renumbered 1701. Then in the 1950s it was rebuilt to being used in maintenance of way service on the Chicago Northwestern Railroad and was renumbered X300902. Also, it was used for providing mobile accommodations for crews that were maintaining the railroad as well. Then this car was retired, and then in 1995 it was then acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today, and sometimes it is carried on the museum's tracks as well.
What you see right behind me is Elgin, Joliet, and Eastern 529.
Elgin, Joliet, and Eastern 529 was built by the International Car Company in Kenton, Ohio in 1956 and is an all-steel off-center cupola caboose. This caboose was used for the Elgin, Joliet, and Eastern Railroad many years ago as the train crew's office and was used on the back end of freight trains for the most part as well. Then this caboose was later retired, was eventually acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is seen today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 760.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 760 was built by Fairbanks Morse Corp in Beloit, Wisconsin in 1944 and is the L1001st diesel locomotive built by that factory and is an H1044 type diesel locomotive. This locomotive is the first Fairbanks Morse Corp diesel ever built. The locomotive was tested and eventually sold to the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad and originally was numbered 1802. Then in 1959 it was renumbered 760, which it is presently. This locomotive was used for hauling freight trains many years ago and it was even used to do some switching as well. Then in 1980 the locomotive was retired and then in 1981 it was acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, and then later was restored to operation and can even be seen operating sometimes as well.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 1603.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 1603 was built by Alco in Schenectady, New York in 1939 and is the 690/77th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is an HH660 type diesel locomotive. This locomotive was used for hauling freight trains many years ago and it was even used to do some switching as well. This is the original number to the locomotive. Then in 1959 it was renumbered 983. Then it was used at Gate City Industrial Center and was renumbered 208 for that as well. Then the locomotive was retired in 1984 and was acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. Then later on it was repainted to its original paint scheme and number it had originally. Today it can be found here at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 01612.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 01612 was built by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad Shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1929 and is an all-steel cupola caboose. It is part of the order of cabooses numbered from 1601 to 1615. It was used as the train crew's office when being used on the back of freight trains for the railroad many years ago. Then the railroad merged to Soo Line in 1986, and it was then renumbered X5001 and was converted to being a superintendent's car, and also it saw service over the system as well. Then later on the caboose was retired and in 2001 it was then acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today. In 2020 it was being repainted to how it originally looked till the project was soon complete. Today it is preserved at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Pacific Fruit Express 68428.
Pacific Fruit Express 68428 was built by Pacific Fruit Express in Colton, California, 1928, and is a wooden refrigerator car. It was once used for hauling produce, fruits and vegetables, and other food products. The Southern Pacific retained the Pacific Fruit Express name, while Union Pacific named its half Union Pacific Fruit Express. The ice keeping the cargo would melt and the car would have to be reloaded with new blocks of ice before every run. It was used on freight trains like mixed freight trains or a train with a line of refrigerator cars on the railroad many years ago. Then later on it was retired, and in 1989 it was then acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Union Refrigerator Transit 37190.
Union Refrigerator Transit 37190 was built by General American Transportation Company in 1948 and is a refrigerator car. This car was used for the United Refrigerator Transit Company, which was a St. Louis, Missouri and Milwaukee, Wisconsin-based private refrigerator car line established in 1895 by the Joseph Schiltz Brewing Company. Also, this refrigerator car was used for hauling like produce, vegetables, and even dairy products, as well as that and other stuff that this car may have hauled many years ago and was used on freight trains and even used like on a line of refrigerator cars identical to it many years ago, and even used on freight trains for the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad many years ago as well. Then later on, this car was retired and it was then donated to the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois by the General American Transportation Corporation, where it is seen on where it is today, and sometimes it is carried around on the freight train set on the railroad as well.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul X5000.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul X5000 was built by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad Shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1929 and is a dynamometer car. The dynamometer car is a rolling lavatory that tests the pulling power of locomotives. The front coupler is attached to the frame by a hydraulic cylinder. The pull of a locomotive moves a piston in the cylinder and measuring instruments in the car, recording the data. The car contains with an operating compartment with recording table, instruments and tool bench as 2 staterooms which accommodates 4 people each, and also has a toilet, shower, and kitchen. In 1992, it was acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is seen today. In 2021, it was repainted and was given a fresh coat of paint, and it was soon completed and looking good as new. Today, it is preserved at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is seen today, and sometimes it also rolls on the museum's tracks as well.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 97054.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 970-54 was built by General American Car Company in 1958 and is a covered hopper car. This car spent many years on the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad hauling cargo like grain or sand or whatever this car hauled several years ago. Then it was retired and it was then acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is seen today, and sometimes it is carried around on the freight train set on the tracks as well.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 649.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 649 was built by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad Shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and is a 14-section tour-lock sleeper car. Originally, the car was numbered 5772 and was named Granite Falls. Also, this car was used on passenger trains many years ago for the railroad. Originally, it was painted for the Olympia and Hiawatha passenger train between Chicago and the Pacific Northwest. And also, the car would be where people would spend the night on board as well. Then in 1951, it was renumbered 552. Then in 1955, it was repainted yellow when it was used jointly by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Union Pacific and Southern Pacific between Chicago, Milwaukee, and the West Coast, and it took over joint operation of the Union Pacific's city's passenger trains into Chicago. It was rebuilt and was renumbered to 649. Then in 1985, it was retired and was bought by a private owner. Then it was used by the Fremont and Elkhorn Valley Railroad in Nebraska and was sporting the yellow scheme used after 1955 by the railroad. A second private owner painted it back to the original scheme. A third private owner began restoring the car in 1993 and it was moved to Chamberlain, South Dakota, where the restoration work was continued. Then it came back to the Fremont and Elkhorn Valley Railroad and has been there for a number of years. Then in 2017, it was bought by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, and in summer that year, it was moved to the museum where it is preserved today. In 2018, it was soon being repainted to a Union Pacific paint scheme till the restoration was soon completed. Today, it can be found here at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is seen today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago North Shore and Milwaukee 253.
Chicago North Shore and Milwaukee 253 was built by the Jouett Car Company in Akron, Ohio in 1917 and is a combine interurban car. This car saw service on the Chicago North Shore and Milwaukee Railroad and hauled people and baggage from station to station between downtown Chicago, Illinois and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It featured a baggage compartment as well as it was used to store baggage inside it and mostly have passengers on board, where the passenger section would be as well. Then, in 1963, when the line was abandoned, the car was then acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13572.
Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 13572 was built by the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad Havelock shops in Havelock, Nebraska in 1960 and is a streamlined style cupola caboose. This caboose was used on the back of freight trains many years ago on the railroad and was used as the train crew's office. Then in 1970, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, Spokane, Portland, and Seattle, Northern Pacific and Great Northern Railroads merged to form the Burlington Northern Railroad, and it was renumbered 10343 and was repainted to a Burlington Northern green. Then later on, this caboose was retired, and then in 1991, it was acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today, and it is even used part of the caboose train as well, and sometimes it is like coupled to the freight set as well.
What you see right behind me is Union Pacific 3786.
Union Pacific 3786 was built by Mount Vernon Shops in Mount Vernon, Illinois in 1942 and is a CA3 class all-steel caboose. This is the car's original number. This caboose was used on the back of freight trains many years ago as the train crew's office whenever it was used by the Union Pacific Railroad. In 1959, it was renumbered to 5061. Then in 1989, it was retired and was donated to the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is preserved today. It was soon repainted in its original form, and sometimes it is seen being used on the museum tracks and being used on the caboose train or sometimes the freight set as well.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 1984.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 1984 was built by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1946 and is a rib-sided bay window caboose. This caboose was once used on freight trains many years ago on the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad and was used as the train crew's office as well. It was likely renumbered 991, 984 as well. Then later on, this caboose was retired, and then in 1983, it was acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today, and also it is sometimes used on the caboose train or on the freight train sets as well.
What you see right behind me is Chicago Great Western 601.
Chicago Great Western 601 was built by Pullman Standard in 1946 and is a center cupola caboose. This caboose was used behind freight trains as the train crew's office many years ago. In 1968, the railroad was merged to the Chicago Northwestern, and the caboose was repainted and renumbered 10500. Then, later on, it was retired, and it was then acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today. In 2005, it was being repainted to how it originally looked on the Chicago Great Western Railroad, and it was reunited with its original number. Today, it is preserved at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, and also it is even used part of the caboose train as well, and sometimes is like coupled to the freight set also.
What you see right behind me is Conrail 4601.
Conrail 4601 was built by General Electric in Schenectady, New York in 1956 and is the 325 44th electric locomotive built by that factory and is an E33 type electric locomotive. This locomotive was built originally for the Virginian Railroad and was originally numbered 131. And it was used to pull trains for the railroad as the Virginian electrified its 135-mile line from Roanoke, Virginia to Mullins, West Virginia in 1925. And these locomotives were to be the most advanced electric motive power the railroad owned. Then, in 1956, the Virginian Railroad merged to the Norfolk and Western Railroad, and the locomotive was renumbered 231. Then, as Norfolk and Western saw diesels as the future of motive power, electrification was discontinued in 1962, and the locomotive was sold to the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad, where it was renumbered 300, and it was reclassified as an EF4S. Then, in 1969, the New York, New Haven, and Hartford merged to Penn Central, and the locomotive was then renumbered 4601. Then, when that railroad merged to Conrail in 1976, the locomotive kept the number. In 1981, it was retired and the Conrail discontinued the electrifications and the locomotive was sold to the factory that built it. Then, in 1988, it was acquired by the Railroad Museum of New England in Waterbury, Connecticut. Then, in 2015, it was acquired by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. Also, Conrail 4601 is one of two surviving E33s from Virginian, Norfolk and Western, New York, New Haven and Hartford, Penn Central and Conrail, and General Electric. And Virginian 135 is the other one and is at the Virginia Museum of Transportation in Roanoke, Virginia, and 4601 can be seen here at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is seen today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago Northwestern 7009.
Chicago and Northwestern 7009 was built by Electromotive Division in LaGrange, Illinois in 1985 and is the 847-049 diesel locomotive built by that factory and is an SD50 type diesel locomotive. This locomotive spent several years in revenue service hauling freight trains on the railroads it served for many years, and it originally worked the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. In 1995, the Chicago and Northwestern merged to Union Pacific, and the locomotive then saw service on that railroad, and it likely retained the Chicago Northwestern livery but kept the number as well. Then, in 2001, it was sold to National Railway Equipment in Silvis, Illinois, where it sat stored and would also be leased to some railroads. It was then put into retirement in 2006 and it sat stored on the National Railway Equipment property. Then, in 2022, the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois bought the locomotive and it arrived to the site by rail. It soon arrived at the museum and was soon going under repaint and was also restored to operation. Today, it can be found here at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois, where it is today, and sometimes it can be seen operating on the museum's tracks as well.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific 4506.
Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific 4506 was built by Electromotive Division in LaGrange, Illinois in 1952 and is the 175/97th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is a GP7 type diesel locomotive. This locomotive was originally numbered 1266, and also it was used for hauling freight trains as well when it worked for the railroad many years ago. Then in 1967 it was rebuilt in Silvis, Illinois and was renumbered 4506. Then in 1980 it was sold to the Chicago Northwestern Railroad and was renumbered 4106. Then it was retired and sat idle in Janesville, Minnesota and was planned to be a parts engine, but it wasn't. In 2007, it was bought by the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois and was restored to operation. In 2017, it was repainted to the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific paint scheme and numbered 4506 and also can sometimes be seen operating on the museum's tracks as well. And at this point, the locomotive has the number 4160 and Chicago Northwestern magnet. on its Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific blue and white livery and has been looking like this since Diesel Days 2024 and will eventually be back to normal looking as well.
Well, I hope y'all enjoy learning about trains with me today in Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Also, I hope to see y'all again in the next segment. And if you didn't subscribe to my channel yet, the subscribe button is just down below the video screen. And if you didn't give the Facebook page a like yet, here's where you'll want to go. And if you didn't give the Instagram page a follow yet, here's where you'll want to go as well. Also, be sure to get your merch at teesprings.com. Link is in the description box below, along with the Facebook and Instagram pages. And remember to subscribe to the Train Guy. So this is Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Sign now. Until next time, all aboard.